Senator, can you repeat the number?
Yes, the foundation aid figure is one.
The question is specifically foundation aid, not the total amount. I just want to be sure that I've clearly asked it. That is the foundation aid portion that I'm interested in knowing.
Just to clarify, Mr. President, the actual total, excuse me, is $16,482,951,037.
And if the senator would continue to yield to
Yes.
the president.
Senator yields.
Senator, what increase is that over the foundation aid that was in the executive's budget that was presented to us back in January?
Yes, Mr. President, it's $360 million over the governor's proposal.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. President, if the senator would continue to yield.
Yes.
Senator yields.
Would you identify what the total amount of money in this budget is for the purposes of community schools?
Through you, Mr. President, there's $100 million set aside under the foundation aid and an additional $75 million in the community schools line.
Thank you, Senator. If the senator will continue to yield through the
Yes.
president.
Senator yields.
Thank you. My understanding of the executive budget that we saw was there was a standalone allocation of $100 million for community schools. And if I understand the senator's response correctly, that there's $75 million as a separate set-aside, $25 million less, and the remaining $100 million is actually coming out of that $360 million of additional foundation aid. Is that a correct understanding of what is in this three-way agreement?
Through you, Mr. President, we gave the same amount that the governor had in his proposal for community schools, but we just did a set aside in foundation aid.
If the senator would continue to yield, the same amount drawn from a set-aside is not the same as a standalone amount. So I want to repeat again, my understanding is that $100 million that is set aside out of an additional $360 million is not the same as a separate $100 million direct allocation. I want to make sure that is a clear understanding of what's been agreed upon.
Thank you, Mr. President. The original executive proposal was so widely drawn that it could be used for operating aid, and what we were able to do is set it aside so that it could be used for community schools or operating aid.
If the senator would continue to yield, Mr. President.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Senator yields.
Forgive me. Senator, what is the amount of money in this budget that has been identified for special act schools? Any combination of 4201s and 853s and so forth?
Through you, Mr. President, actually the budget adds $2.3 million for 4201 schools. There's no increase in special act schools, And there's $903,000 that was added for the New York State Schools for the Deaf.
Thank you, Senator. Would the senator continue to yield through the chair?
Yes.
To the president, sorry. Can we identify what is in this budget that relates to the proposal that was in the Assembly One House to de-link the APPR approved plans from school aid? The legislation that we passed requires APPR approved plans to be in place by September of this year, or forfeiting school aid, which is a significant hit and is part of what we're seeing in our runs and in our additional aid. What does this budget say about the delinkage issue?
Mr. President, that is not included in this portion of the state budget.
Will the senator yield through the president?
Yes.
Thank you. Do we anticipate in the remaining sections of the budget that we are to see that this issue will be addressed, or is the fact that it is not in this section of the budget the final word on the matter for this budget?
Through you, Mr. President, we're not addressing it in the budget at all.
Thank you. Would the senator continue to yield?
Yes.
Would the senator outline what the provisions, with as much dollar specificity as you can, of what this budget does to increase charter school funding?
Through you, Mr. President, for charter schools, there's an increase of $54.8 million in grants and aid. There's $430 per pupil, as well as what's allowed in current law, which is supplemental tuition of $500 per pupil.
Thank you, Senator. Will the senator continue to yield through the president?
Yes.
Thank you, Senator. So just to summarize sort of the major areas, as I understand it, we have increased foundation aid by $360 million over the executive's budget, but $100 million of that is set aside to deal with community schools. We have added $2.3 million for special act schools, a lesser amount for the School for the Deaf, and did not changing, pardon me, for 4201s, $2.3 million. Nothing on special act schools, and we have added for charter schools $54.8 million. Is that a correct summary of how this budget has expanded over the executives?
It's close, but I do want to clarify just one or 2 points. First of all, you said that $100 million under foundation aid was strictly for community schools. Actually, that aid, as I stated before, is flexible, and that's at the request of the education community, who wanted to have fewer restrictions on the funding so that it can be used in the way that's most appropriate for the needs at hand. And the second part is GEA, and the GEA was through you, Mr. President, the GEA, as we've talked about, has been eliminated at $189 million over the governor's proposal.
And if the senator would continue to yield through the
Yes.
president, my understanding of the GEA restoration, which I fully support, is that the governor proposed $189 million restoration, and this budget adds $244 million to make a full restoration in this fiscal document. Is that a correct understanding? Okay, very good. Final question, and I appreciate the senator's forbearance. The proposed education tax credit, does this budget finance that, or is it silent on that proposal?
Through you, Mr. President, it's not included in the budget.
Senator, thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Espaillat.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is an important budget as it addresses many important issues, including one that addresses income inequality in New York State. President Franklin D. Roosevelt instituted for the first time the minimum wage right in the middle of the greatest, the worst depression that we had in this nation. And he did so not just to put extra dollars in people's pockets, but to also stimulate the economy and to get folks the ability to purchase, for the most part, emergency items in grocery stores, supermarkets, etc. And so here we are, we're not facing that kind of a depression, obviously, in our nation. In fact, the job growth has been tremendous in the last 8 years, and the economy is doing better, but there is a serious income inequality, and raising the minimum wage, it's an important way to try to address that. And this budget allows for New York City to eventually reach $15 an hour, for some other areas in the state to reach $12 and then $12.50 with an index. It further includes the minimum wage for farm workers. And you may know that farm workers are the only job category in this state that does not receive all the benefits that other workers receive, including overtime, pay, a day rest, the right to organize and collectively bargain in workers' compensation. But this time around, although handsome benefits were given to the agricultural industry, we were more sensitive than ever before as a House, and we have included and have not carved out those that bring food to our table and have allowed them also to have a piece of the pie by getting the minimum wage. So these are important provisions of this budget. Paid family leave is another great provision. And of course, increased education funding, particularly for community schools, those schools that are showing to have great needs and challenges academically. There's also a infrastructure spending that is very important. So this is a good budget. It has its holes and challenges, but for the most part, I've been here 2 decades. This is one of the best budgets that I've seen, and for that reason, Mr. President, I will be voting in the affirmative.
Senator Stavisky.
Will the senator yield for one question?
Senator Yields.
Yes.
Senator Yields.
During the debate on the capital budget, you spoke about, I asked about the capital money for CUNY and SUNY, and I think you said it was in the Alpha budget. It is.
Senator, aid to localities is what I said.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Senator Diaz.
Good morning, Mr. President.
Buenos dias.
On the bill.
Diaz on the bill.
But before I say anything, Mr. President, I would like to express my appreciation to all the beautiful staff that since yesterday morning has been around waiting, married women, mothers, husband, and they've been around working without sleeping. So I would like to express my appreciation to all of them. On the other hand, Mr. President, in the city of New York, we have a problem with shelters, homeless shelters. See, shelters, the landlords in the city, they charge sometimes $3,000 per apartment. It's a business. It's a big racket business in the city of New York. But the landlord and then the organization that runs the shelter depends on the landlords for them to fix the problem. Sometimes the elevators are broken, the walls are falling apart, and then they blame the organization for problems that are supposed to be corrected by the landlords. There was a rumor that the beloved governor of the state of New York, Andrew Cuomo, decided to embarrass the mayor of the city of New York, the Honorable Bill de Blasio. The governor, Andrew Cuomo, decided that he's going to take over. A coup, like the one we gave here in 2009. A coup, so to embarrass the mayor, he decided to take over and put some organization to run the shelter when they found something wrong. But the city of New York will pay the money, will pay for everything, but the governor will get the power to send his people to run the shelter that the city of New York is paying for. I have no problem with the governor taking the whole shelters. I have no problem with that, but the state should pay for it, not the city of New York. But nonetheless, they told me, no, it's been rejected, nothing happens, that will not happen. So, yesterday morning, Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, I was called to the second floor, and I was so happy that this black guy from Puerto Rico, with a kinky hair and a broken language, English, was called to the second floor. I have not been in the second floor since Pataki. Pataki used to be my friend. And going to Pataki, I used to go to the second floor. But I never, after Pataki, Mr. President, and ladies and gentlemen, I never been in the second floor because I refuse to be part of the game. I refuse to be part of the lies. I refuse to be part of the hypocrisy. So now I went to the second floor with Spitzer, with Patterson, and in the last 7 years, with this guy, with the Governor Cuomo, I had not been to the second floor. Refused. But yesterday, I was invited. I said, let me go to the second floor. And I was received by a guy by the name Joss. Joss took me to a room to sit down with Mr. Alfonso Davis. And the two of them told me, Mr. Davis told me, Senator, don't worry. What you worry about the takeover is not going, it's not happening. We are not taking over. It's not going to be in the budget. Mr. President and ladies and gentlemen, I look to the eyes of Mr. Davis, a black guy like me, and I ask him, Mr. Davis, are you assuring me that it's don't go, because they're saying that you're trying to stick this in another way, in another part of the budget. No, it won't happen. We don't need to do that. It won't happen. Are you sure? Mr. Davis, look at my face. Look at my face and tell me that will not happen. It will not happen. Mr. Davis, you want to shake my hand and tell me that will not happen? Say, I'm shaking your hand, looking at your eyes, and it will not happen. I left the second floor. a black guy in victory. Happy, because I was talking with gentlemen, with men of honor, with men of good reputation. So I left. Suddenly, my conference talked about and presented me with a budget where the takeover is in. Then I say, I'm 73 years old. I'm an old man. So, Mr. David, are you lying to an old man? So, Mr. David, are you lying to a senator? So, Mr. David, are you lying to a minister? Because, Mr. President and ladies and gentlemen, this game of lying, they are used to it. They have called Senator Rivera. They have called Senator Peralta, Senator Espaillat, and they have promised year after year, they have promised them, we're going to do the Dream Act, you're going to do the Dream Act, and then they lie to them. Because I'm a minister, and because I'm an old man and a black guy, I said, to me, they're going to be right with me. They lied to me. They look at my face, Mr. Alfonso Davis. Look at my face and lie to me. I always told my son is a Bronx Borough president. I told my son, when you shake hands with somebody, you better die, but you don't break that. You shake hands, you keep your word, because that's all you have. And this is all we have. You give me your word, I give you my word that I'm going to support you, that I'm going to do something for you. I will die, but I will keep my word. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to vote for this. You know why I'm voting for this? Because of the minimum wage and because of the family pay leave. But because it's sticking there, smart people. So they stuck it in there. How could I vote no? So then people want to say, oh, you vote no on the minimum wage. Oh, you won't do against the family because you won't know. See, so I cannot vote, no, I have to vote yes. But they lied to me. The governor's office lied to me. Mr. Davey and Mr. Josh, they lied to me. And I want all of you to know they lied to me. And I want to write what you should know. I'm going to put in what you should know, that they lied to me, they lied to me, they lied to me. Lying is a sin, especially when you look at people's eyes. Look at people, give me your hand. Don't invite me to a second floor. I don't need to be in a second floor. I don't ask for much. I don't have to go to a second floor. I've never been in the second floor. Pataki was good to me. The rest have been bad. That's okay. Mr. Davey, whoever you are and wherever you are, God hates ugly. You lied to me in my face. God bless you. Mr. President.
Senator Peralta. Senator Sanders first, I'm sorry. Senator Sanders.
Mr. President, thank you. I would have yielded gladly. I would not lie, Mr. President, if I paid homage to the staff of both sides of this aisle. Both staffs have done an amazing job in trying to get a lot of information, and this reminds me of one of those military training exercises where you had to stay awake for several days to see what you were made of, and I know this, I know that the staff on both sides have really done an admirable job, and they had to stay awake the longest putting this information together, so I wanted to pay homage of that. I also want to encourage us to find another way. Perhaps if we could get this information sooner to each other, we don't have to pull incredible marathons as we are doing. I'm sure that if we were more awake and aware, we could find even better ways to serve the people of this great state. This bill itself on the bill, of course, this great
Senator
bill
Sanders is on the bill.
has a lot of positive things in here and some challenging things. We still haven't figured out what we really want to do with mayoral control. That's going to be the issue of the day. Family paid leave, of course, we have to do something there. I want to say something good about minimum wage. On one hand, I would have preferred to go straight to $15 an hour, and let's see what we can do to help the people of this great state. However, I understand that there may be mitigating circumstances in different places. So I can understand those things, but I think that we need to move in a fast on it because people are hurting in terms of their wages, and we need to deal with that. Because of that, I'm going to, it's not everything that I would like, but I am going to vote for this bill. Thank you, Mr. President, and that you should know.
Senator Peralta.
Thank you, Mr. President. I really want to thank you for allowing Senator Sanders to go before me. But would the sponsor yield for some questions?
It's me.
Sponsor yields.
Yes.
Thank you. Could the sponsor please indicate where within the Alpha Article 7 bill, this bill that we're discussing, the DREAM Act is contained? I'm sure the sponsor, through you, Mr. President, will the sponsor continue to yield?
Sponsor yields.
I'm sure the sponsor is aware that the governor allocated $27 million in the original executive budget proposal for the purposes of enacting the New York State DREAM Act.
Through you, Mr. President, as I pointed out, it's not in the final agreement.
Mr. President, the sponsor continue to yield?
Yes.
Sponsor yields.
So my question was that I'm sure that the sponsor is aware that the executive included $27 million in the budget. Is she aware of that?
Yes.
Sponsor continue to yield?
Sponsor yields.
Can the sponsor indicate why the DREAM Act has been removed from this final budget agreement?
Through you, Mr. President, as I stated previously, and I'll state it again, it was not agreed upon in the final budget.
The sponsor continues to yield?
Yes.
Sponsor yields.
So is the sponsor aware that the governor included $27 million in the budget or the attempted budget agreement, and the Assembly also included $27 million? That leaves then the Senate Republicans disagreeing on the DREAM Act.
Through you, Mr. President, as I indicated previously, and I've said several times now, was not agreed upon in the final budget.
Now, will the sponsor continue to yield?
Yes.
Sponsor yields.
Now, there was a proposal that the sponsors conference pushed forward to increase the TAP eligibility from $80,000 to $100,000 per household in this final budget. Did it make it in?
Through you, Mr. President, no, it did not.
Will sponsor continue to yield?
Yes.
Sponsor yields.
Is the maximum amount of TAP award modified upward as part of this final budget agreement?
Through you, Mr. President, no, there's no change.
The sponsor continue to yield?
Sponsor yields.
So the TAP award stays the same. The income eligibility stays the same from 80 to 100,000. And yet there was two sides of the three, or out of the four, actually three sides of the four, that wanted $27 million for DREAM Act to be part of the final budget.
Through you, Mr. President, just want to clarify what the senator is saying. There is no increase in eligibility, and there is no $80,000 to $100,000 included in the budget. As you know, in our one house, we advocated for increasing TAP, but unfortunately, that was not included in the final agreement.
Would the sponsor continue to yield?
Yes.
Sponsor yields.
Would the sponsor say that we are a country where we punish our children for the actions of their parents?
Through you, Mr. President, we are considering the bill right here in front of us, and I would like to talk about budgetary items that are actually included in the bill.
Mr. President, I think I'm getting to a point, and I just want to ask the question.
Mr. President, Senator is very, able to make his point. I'm going to address the budgetary items that are included before us.
Will the sponsor continue to yield?
Yes.
Sponsor yields.
So, if the governor agreed to $27 million, if the Assembly agreed to $27 million, if IDC agreed to $27 million, why does the sponsor feel that the DREAM Act is not necessary?
Through you, Mr. President, I've stated several times now that there was, it was not agreed upon in the final budget.
Continue to yield?
Yes.
Sponsor yields.
The sponsor is aware that the tuition assistance program is an entitlement program, correct?
Yes.
Meaning that will the sponsor continue to yield?
Sponsor
Yes.
yields.
Meaning that everyone, including the undocumented, would have to meet current residency and income eligibility requirements. Will the sponsor continue to yield?
Yes.
Sponsor yields.
So if everyone has to meet these requirements, whether it's residency and income eligibility, which means that everyone would have to file a tax return using a Social Security number or an ITN number, why wouldn't the DREAM Act be included?
Through you, Mr. President, they also, recipients also have to meet the federal requirements of citizenship in order to qualify.
Will the sponsor continue to yield?
Yes.
Sponsor yields.
So, is the sponsor aware that New York State has in-state tuition that includes undocumented children?
Senator Diaz, why do you rise?
Mr. President, I hear my colleague, Senator Peralta, questioning why is it that the DREAM Act is not there. And he says that the independent conference put it, the Democratic conference. The same way, I want to tell my colleague that the same way, Mr. President, that the governor put the takeover in the budget, he could have put also the Dream Act. So I want my colleague to stop blaming that side for the Dream Act. Because the same way that the governor put the takeover in the budget, he could have put also a Dream Act. So please, let's stop this game, and let's stop the blaming game, because the governor is the only one that could have done this, and he's the only one that had to be blamed.
Senator Peralta, you have the floor.
Thank you.
Are you on the bill, or?
Well, after that, on the bill, Mr.
All
President.
right, Senator Peralta on the bill.
Thank you. Thank you.
Wow. I can't stress enough that there are some things in this budget that I can describe that are very positive. In fact, this could be termed as the year of the worker, and in many respects it's true. I am very happy that New York will have a place, or maintain its place as a progressive leader, as a state that takes gigantic steps forward on the issues of minimum wage, and by establishing a real paid family leave program. New York City will reach a $15 minimum wage by the end of 2018. Long Island and Westchester by 2022. And upstate New York will also see a gradual raise to a $15 minimum wage after reaching a wage of $12.50 by 2021. This spells real relief for millions of low-wage earning New Yorkers. In terms of paid family leave, I'm proud to see that this legislature is finally passing a program that myself and advocates have fought so tirelessly to make a reality for years. Much like the minimum wage proposal, a true 12-week period of paid leave, a 2/3 of an employee earnings, means a real chance for all New Yorkers to attend to the health concerns facing their families. As proud as I am of some of these initiatives, I would be remiss if I did not point out that an extremely important piece is missing from this overall alpha piece. Another year, another budget, and again, we're failing to act on passing the DREAM Act. As much as we're making progress on the labor front, the majority has decided to again engage in its intolerant behavior year after year, preventing us from making the DREAM Act a reality. I've been over the facts before, and I'll go over them again. The tuition assistance program is an entitlement program, meaning that everyone, including the undocumented, will have to meet the current residency and income eligibility requirements, meaning that everyone would have to file a tax return, either using a Social Security number or an ITN number to qualify. For those who don't know, an ITN is used by the undocumented to file taxes. That's what's needed to be eligible. So as long as the household income is under $80,000 a year, and they met all other requirements in the standard, then and only then would they qualify to receive TAP. It's also a fact that college graduates would contribute over $16,000 more in taxes than if they didn't receive a degree, which means that the state's investment would pay for itself and then some, since the maximum investment in any one individual would only be about $20,000 for 4 years of higher education. It's also a fact that the majority is wrong when it says that funding TAP for undocumented New Yorkers would take money away from those who are currently eligible. This just isn't true. The eligibility criteria are the eligibility criteria, period. What's more, the governor originally proposed an allocation of $27 million to fund the DREAM Act as part of this year's executive budget. And if you have all sides minus one side agreeing, I know that there's no complete agreement, but there's one side that's not agreeing. The majority has found more than $27 million to put towards a series of appropriations, some of which are questionable, but that's okay, just as long as the $27 million doesn't mean TAP benefits for those New Yorkers. Ladies and gentlemen, the New York State And the dreamers have really lost out this morning. At about 6:45 in the morning, we're debating this bill, and this is in front of us. And again, another year has passed, and the dreamers will continue to dream. But it's okay, because one day that dream will become a reality, whether the current majority likes it or not. What we have done here again this morning is to say that the American dream is not for you, even though some of these children are the best of the best. Some of these children have come here by no fault of their own. Their parents brought them here. They didn't decide to come here. They went to school. They excelled in school. You have top institutions recruiting them, but yet they cannot go to school because they cannot afford it. And yet we're telling them again, the answer is no. That's okay, because we're not in the majority. I understand that. But we cannot continue to do this to these people, to these kids who work hard, play by the rules, file their taxes through an ITN number, and all they want to do is live the American dream by having a quality higher education. And yet, again, we've turned them down. I'm very disappointed, although there are so many positive things in this budget. As my colleague, Senator Diaz, has pointed out, I am not voting against increasing the minimum wage. I'm not voting against paid family leave. But I do want it on record that these kids, these dreamers, want a future, want to make a difference. And the only thing standing in their way is that they can't afford to go to college. They can't afford it. And the only thing stopping them this morning at 6:45 in the morning